There was a time when I believed that full frame was the destination, that once I got the bigger sensor, the better camera, the more serious system, my photography would naturally improve. And it is true, full frame can be incredible. But over time, walking cities, chasing light, reacting to moments that only lasted for half a second, made me question those early beliefs. Because what was not obvious to me as a novice photographer was this: the best camera for street photography is not always the most powerful one. Sometimes it's the one that gets out of your way. And that's why, after years of shooting, I settled for the APS-C. Not because it is cheaper, not because I can't use a full-frame camera, but because often it helps me get the better photograph. Let me explain. I started my street photography journey with an APS-C camera back in 2014, the Nikon D3200. Funnily enough, when I bought it, I had no idea what APS-C even was. I just wanted a camera, and that was all the budget I had as a university student. Couple of £100 that I had somehow managed to save. I shot with it for a while, first in Edinburgh and then in Manchester, and I had a lot of fun with it. Those were the days, just a young lad and his camera discovering the world through a lens. And honestly, I was happy. But of course, like everyone who catches a bug, the photography bug, I wanted a bit more. I started learning about the full-frame system. I learned that it had a bigger sensor and about what it could do in terms of depth of field, low light performance and image quality. I got very excited. I was a PhD student at the time, probably around 2016, and by eating pasta and cheese almost every day for a while, I managed to save enough to get my first full-frame camera. How exciting that felt. It was the Sony A7 II. Everybody was complaining at the time about its bad autofocus, but I didn't care. It was my first full-frame camera and I loved it. I carried it with me every single day in a bag that had no dedicated space for a camera, just a generic bag. So as you can imagine, the bulky Sony A7 II, at least compared to the Nikon D3200, it would slide left and right, it would get knocks and scratches, but it would be there for me. Eventually, I did buy a proper camera bag and I traveled with it. I captured street moments and landscapes across the UK, also in Germany, in Greece, and in many other places. And for a long time, I believed I had arrived. But no, that was just the beginning. The photography bug, or gear acquisition syndrome, has a unique symptom. Gear is never enough. A couple of years later, after finishing my PhD, I moved to Leicester, and that was around 2018. During that chapter of my life, I eventually managed to destroy my beloved Sony A7 II. And in its place, I bought a camera I haven't spoken about much in this channel, despite it playing a major role in my photographic journey for a while. That was the Sony A6400. Yes, I had moved back to the APS-C system, partly because of budget and partly because I owned some E-mount lenses from the Sony A7 II, so the Sony A6400 felt like a sensible choice. And in hindsight, it truly was. This little camera was a powerhouse. Fantastic image quality, incredible autofocus, fast, capable, reliable. It gave me a really enjoyable experience. A lot of my lockdown photography was made with it. Because I was using my full-frame lenses, every focal length now felt longer because of the crop factor of the APS-C system. My 85mm now was closer to that of a 130mm field of view. And that is how I captured one of my favorite photographs, the man cleaning the streets. But once again, I felt like I was missing something, probably mentally more than photographically, because that is often how gear obsession works. It convinces you that what you lack is technical when it's often emotional. At least that's how I experienced it. Or maybe it is just an excuse for not putting in the work to improve your skills. Or maybe it's both. In any case, I wanted a full frame again. I believe that APS-C must be leaving something on the table, some superior potential. And it was not long before I reached for the camera that would stay with me for years, even to this day, the Sony A7 III. The camera I used to photograph the streets for a long time, before I made another groundbreaking realization. I spent a few years shooting with the Sony A7 III and usually paired it with the Sony D5mm lens. I enjoyed this combo so much, but over time our relationship started to exhibit some friction. You see, when you are walking on the streets for hours and hours, small nuances and irritations start to become larger and larger. Imagine wearing uncomfortable shoes and having to walk 20,000 steps that day. It is not going to feel very comfortable, is it? I think the camera you hold has a very similar effect. A bulky camera that requires a lot of energy to lift and hold on your eye will eventually tire you. And if you already have tired wrists and fingers from your day job, that becomes a major factor. And that was when I realized something important. In 2020, I moved to Cambridge, still shooting with the Sony A7 III most of the time. I was not that old in 2020, but due to many reasons, my wrists had already started to feel the wear of time. Also, my photographic personality had started to change. I had started becoming quicker, reacting faster to moments with meaning, and my camera setup did not follow. The bulky Sony A7 III with the Sony D5mm was simply too big, too heavy, too noticeable. I knew I needed a change. The only thing I had to do was to admit it to myself. Eventually I did, and this is how my first Fujifilm entered my life. The Fuji X-T3. I love this camera. I love the experience shooting with it. I love that all the lenses were smaller. I love the feeling of it. I love the smaller files. And I love that it was feeling like it was getting out of the way of my creativity. It was there not just as a means of taking a photo, but as my way of capturing my vision onto a photograph seamlessly. And that is when I sold the Sony A6400 and all my Sony lenses except of one. Because then the Sony A7 III became my camera for video and the Fuji became my camera for the streets. I enjoyed my experience shooting with it so much that eventually I sold it and upgraded to the Fuji X-T5. To be fair, there are plenty of moments when I still miss the Fuji X-T3, but this is a discussion for another day. But curiously, the story does not end there though. I love the APS-C system and the smaller form factor of the APS-C cameras that I doubled down. I added a smaller but powerful APS-C camera, the Ricoh GR IIIx. This camera is a miracle. If I feel insecure, hesitant and I do not want to shoot that day, I just take the Ricoh GR IIIx with me. When I have it in my hands, I really don't care. I just snap away pictures and enjoy the process, sometimes not even looking at the camera screen. And that is why recently I got the Ricoh GR IV in my kit. Because the magic of having a camera that does not take center stage in street photography is invaluable. To be honest, it feels like it is the whole point. But there is always a but. I'm slowly changing or maybe evolving who I am as a photographer. And the Sony A7 III seems to be coming back for more structural work and for things with bigger responsibilities that I will probably discuss with you in the near future. Until then, I would like to hear from you. What is the system that you prefer to use when you're doing street photography, traveling, or you're doing any other type of photography? Let me know. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, consider subscribing with the bell, or become a member to support the work behind these films. Now, if you want to see how I use different lenses in my photography, click and watch this video next. That was all for today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I will see you on the streets. Bye bye.